If you're a high income earner making over $400,000 per year and you want to get into real estate, specifically with short-term rentals, so you can keep more of your hard-earned income with low money down deals and take advantage of the bonus depreciation, get a cash flowing property, do this year over year, and then eventually use equity from your deals to fund your future real estate purchases, this is the video for you. And specifically, this is only for high income earners. So if this is not you, just know that, hey, we're happy to work with you or support you when you get to that level. And specifically what we're going to cover today is for anybody who makes over $400,000 per year and wants to get into real estate so that they can do low money down deals, keep more of their hard earned income and get cash flow and appreciation so you can do this year over year. This is 90% of everything you're going to need to know. I will give you guys the number one thing most everybody is looking for, the top markets, where our company is going to be focusing over the next 1 to 2 years, how to get started and what this whole end-to-end process actually looks like, the big 3 items that you should be looking for, and then a couple recalibrations on what you should and shouldn't be looking for. The bonus depreciation will cover all that, and then some FAQs. So some quick client wins before we dive in. It's been absolutely phenomenal working with guys like Peter Eck and Jason Hoop. I'm going to celebrate these two here. Peter has done his 3rd deal with us. He gave us a phenomenal testimonial. This is actually available on LinkedIn. If you do go and look up Peter and Equity Builders LLC, you'll see him celebrating. He's on deal number 3 with us. And then Jason Hoop, between he and his sister, who both run dental clinics, they've actually been closing on deal number 5 this week. And these are the 3 most recent deals that Jason has done. If you guys ever want to speak to a client, just let me know. And I'm going to highlight a couple other things. So 1 out of every 2 clients over the last 12 months actually ends up referring another client within their first 9 months of working with us. And for anybody who does their 2nd deal with us, they're typically doing it within the first year of working together, which has been phenomenal. Most of our clients do end up doing more than 1 deal. And for those clients who do end up doing at least more than 1 deal, on average, they're doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deals. Jason being that guy who just did his 5th or started with his 5th this year. And what I think is the coolest update of all, we actually just expanded the property management or co-hosting team that most of our clients end up using to actually include Justin, who is the #1 co-host in all of North America based on volume of 5-star reviews and his average rating. So before we dive in, we're going to look at what you're actually trying to optimize for here. So what does winning look like? That's getting a deal that is low money down, that actually cash flows, where you'll be able to take a massive write-off. The name of the game is definitely getting bonus depreciation. That's why we do short-term rentals and not long-term rentals. So you can have that cash flow and make money every single year, but also keep more of your hard-earned income so that you can do this profitably every single year. Typically, most clients want to do 1, 2, sometimes 3 or 4 short-term rentals every single year. The name of the game is doing this consistently every single year for at least 3 to 6 years, so that by years 3, 4, 5, 6, you're typically pulling equity out of the homes with cash out refis so you can start funding your future deals. And we play what I like to call, and I'll talk about in a separate video, the infinite money glitch game, where you're funding your future purchases with the equity that you're pulling out from your old purchases. And then what most people's game plan looks like is to do this for anywhere from 4 to 6 years on the low end to 6 to 10 years, depending upon how far you are from your ideal retirement timeline. And I'm going to cover everything you pretty much need to be aware of. So let's start with the big 3. Best markets, what this whole process looks like end to end, and how to get into the Airbnb game. So let's start with what defines an ideal market. I have created this rule, and I like to call it the 10% rule, which highlights 3 specific things that you're always going to look for. Number 1 is this 1 ratio of gross annual income to purchase price. The next is your total entry. So you want low money down deals. And then the 3rd is going to be cash on cash. Okay, so let's do every single one of these. The first one. So our team specifically focuses on a handful of areas, which I'll get to in a second. And the number 1 thing we look at is we want to make sure that clients who are buying these deals do not have an issue with being able to gross enough revenue to cover all their expenses. And what we have found is there's this golden ratio of 10% as it relates to the total amount that you are grossing in terms of your revenue. So $100,000 a year would be $8,300-ish every single month. That's 100,000 in income. And what we want to make sure is that that number probably gives us enough cushion to make sure that we're actually profitable. So that is the number one metric. And 99% of deals that we look at, for context, our team needs to look at anywhere between 350 to 500-ish deals just to get one deal that ends up working. So every single week we look at anywhere from 2,200 on deals on the low end, all the way up to 3,500, even 4,000. So we're looking at anywhere from typically 300 to 700 deals per day. And on most days, we're actually looking at 600 to 1,000 just to get a handful of deals that work every single week, because 99% of homes do not pass this one metric. Okay, so that example is $1 million home worth $1 million. It needs to gross at least $100,000 a year. Okay, so that's item number one. Number two, we really like low entry deals. So there are a couple ways that you can do this. The one most common one is going to be seller financing deals. So a seller who owns their home in almost all cash. So think about somebody who bought a home 8 to 15 years ago. They've been sitting on that home for quite a while. It's gone up considerably in value. They own the home very close to all in cash or close to all in cash. So they're very, very comfortable taking this extremely low down payment. And I like to use the $1 million purchase price home example. They're very comfortable taking a small down payment because what they don't want to incur is capital gains tax. So a seller who's going to sell a home is going to be liable to anywhere from 15 to 20% capital gains tax on their gains that they've made, plus 2 or 3 other small tax items, which do add up. You know, somebody who bought a home for $350,000, it's now worth $1 million 8 years later. They're probably on the hook for a tax bill in the range of $200,000 to $450,000, at least, depending upon the area that they're in. So that's why we look for, again, the ratio of income to purchase price, the total entry into the deal, and then this cash on cash ratio is a combination of a couple items. So I'm going to give an example here. So let's say we've got that same $1 million home. It grossed over $100,000 or right around there in the last 12 months. And then based on how we underwrite deals, so our company manages, or a separate company that we own, manages anywhere from 250 to 350 homes on average every single month. In most areas, we know what the mortgage payment, what the tax, what the insurance, what the utilities is likely going to amount to. So we have a pretty good idea of projecting what the expenses are going to be. So let's say in this example, we project a home to generate $10,000 in net cash flow. What we want to see is a cash on cash return that is that dollar value, so the net free cash flow, as a percentage of the total entry into the deal. So 10,000 divided by, and in this scenario, I said an $85,000 down payment and then $15,000-ish in closing costs. That gives us $10,000 in net cash flow as a percentage of the total down payment plus closing costs, the total entry amount. We like to see at least a 10% cash on cash return. Now, as you watch more videos from us, and if you actually decide to work with us, you'll see that we only push deals that are right at least 10% cash on cash return. Again, we look at thousands of deals every single month and only really present 4 to 12 deals per week for all of our clients, depending upon the week. So most deals do not work, and we're very, very comfortable and okay disqualifying deals that are even close. Now, you might have a scenario where you end up doing a lower cash on cash deal, because this would be a scenario where you buy in, let's say in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, for example. We see a lot of brand new developments, homes built within the last 6 to 24 months. The developer is very okay selling the home slightly under market value because it's the only way that they're going to get their cash out right now. That would be a phenomenal scenario where the cash flow might not be super, super great, but you're buying a $950,000 home for something like $880,000, which we actually had 2 clients do something very similar to that in the last 6 months. And then a separate scenario is if you're getting something like a crazy low entry. So a scenario like this, for example, I think of Barry, a client that we've worked with on multiple deals. A year and a half ago, he got into a deal in Santa Rosa Beach for $1.4 million. That was, I think it was something like $45,000 down, like 2.5% to 4% entry or something crazy, crazy low. And that scenario, like I mentioned here, is pretty exceptional and also exceptionally rare. That home is breaking even in slight positive cash flow, but there isn't a ton of cash on cash return. But he bought a $1.4 million home for like $60,000 or $70,000 all in, which is crazy, crazy low. So top markets that we like to look at for states, There are about 6 or 7 different cities throughout Florida that we'll always look at. Number one area is going to be Davenport and Kissimmee by far. There's about a 30 to 50 minute drive from downtown Orlando, or specifically Disney. And then also 5 or 6 other cities, some other parts of southeastern Florida, some parts that are a little bit further out from the Orlando area. And then Texas, there are always 2 cities that we're looking at, the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We've done phenomenally well out there. And then the same thing with Austin, Texas. And then 3 specific cities, with one of these being a group of about 6 different cities. Broken Bow, Oklahoma is phenomenal. If you're familiar with Texas and North Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth is in the upper portion of Texas. Broken Bow is around a 2.5 to 3.5 hour drive away from there. Phenomenal market, tons of new rentals coming in there every single year. Not a ton of saturation, not going to be for probably a long time, and a lot of homes that will go up in value over time. Branson, Missouri is phenomenal. This is close to, if you've seen the show, The Ozarks. Ton of money, ton of super affluent people who come from 15 to 35 minutes outside of this area towards Branson. And then my personal favorite area where I'm actually going to start doing my first deals out in this area after having seen dozens of clients for the last 18 months, closing on homes out in this area and doing exceptionally well. The Poconos. This is a combination of 4 to 6 different cities. There's Blakesley, there's Tobyhanna, there's Whitehaven, there's Gouldsboro, and then 1 to 2 other cities. This is a resort lake area. A lot of people from New York and upstate New York and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who are extremely affluent come to this area. They drive around 1.5 to 4 hours, and they have tons of money. This is the most insane market for the cash on cash ratio, which I'll get into in a little bit more as I workshop an example. So in the Poconos, they also are exceptionally well on this ratio as well. They are literally, if not the number one, they might be in the top 5, 10 comfortably. I actually think they're probably very close to number one across the entire US. As a ratio of the total amount that a home out there grosses relative to its purchase price, if you dropped that home, like a $450,000, $600,000 home in the Poconos, for example, if you dropped it into another market, it would not have the same gross revenue numbers. This area, there's exceptionally high demand. So I could talk about this area all day. What you're going to want to look for. So this is what the end-to-end process looks like. And I would recommend, again, this is for somebody who's trying to do it on their own. I would also say this is 90% of what we would do as a company for you if we were working with you. 100% recommend just start with homes that are already live as a short-term rental. Now, why is this super critical? The number one thing you want to avoid is uncertainty on how is the property going to cash flow, or what type of income is it going to gross as a short-term rental in the first 12 to 24 months that you own it. This way, you can use tools like AirDNA, like Price Labs, and then even compare against a profit and loss statement from a seller. You can literally within 90 seconds get a pretty high confidence interval of what a home is likely to do in the next 12, 18, 24 months based on what its historical projection has been. The reason I suggest you start with something that is also an existing short-term rental is if you are trying to furnish the home yourself, it's going to add in quite a bit to your expenses. It's going to drop your cash on cash return. And then also there are a lot of variables. You know, you could do a terrible job furnishing it. You have to have some element of interior design and some acumen there. But also it's just a very low dollar per hour thing. If you're, you know, again, like I mentioned, somebody who's making $400,000 plus per year, the dollars per hour that you make at your active income is pretty high. You want to be trading off, you know, lower income activities. So you probably hire an interior designer. I would recommend for you, unless you're a pro, unless you've been doing this for a while, just start with something that's pre-furnished, which, by the way, 100% of the deals that we source are actually pre-furnished existing short-term rentals. You're going to use these tools. And then also what I would recommend if you're doing this on your own and you're not working with somebody like us, I would engage and find a local property management group, either just searching through Google or what's probably going to be more common, a Facebook group that is specific to investors, short-term rental enthusiasts, long-term rental enthusiasts for that area. Just post in there. You'll find an agent. You'll find somebody reaching out. They'll connect you with a local property management group. They can validate, you know, what a home did on AirDNA and Price Labs, and then they can give you, you know, plus or minus about 10 to 15% of what the home just did. Is it going to be slightly higher, slightly lower, or roughly the same as it did in the last 12 months? Then you're going to work with an agent or a consultant. So a company like us would be labeled as a consultant, so we're not agents, to draft an agreement after they've negotiated the price and terms with the seller. You're going to then sign that agreement and get a title thread open with the title company. And then here are the big 3 items. Now, if you've never done an investment property before, a lot of these items are pretty similar to what you did when you closed on your primary residence, which is where you live. An inspection report, I still personally don't offload this to anybody else in my company. I have literally reviewed every inspection report that I have ever closed on for any client, and then also people that I've partnered with deals on. 99% of homes we still end up closing on, but what is specifically very high leverage about this activity is you're going to typically find things that you can get what's called a seller credit for. So the average seller credit that we get, which is a dollar amount that gets credited back to you, the buyer, at closing, literally it goes off of your total cash to close. We get, depending upon the deal, anywhere from $1,500 to $4,500 on the low end to typically something in the range of $5,500 all the way up to $15,000, depending upon the size of the deal, in closing cost reimbursements, or what we would label as a seller credit or a seller concession. So inspection, you want to order that right out of the gate. You want to start getting probably anywhere from 2 to 6 different homeowner insurance or HOI policy quotes, depending upon the area. In Florida, we try and get many, many more because we can obviously get somebody who's typically going to be a little more competitive. In other areas, it's, we just typically get 2 or 3 and then we're good to go. We bind 1 and then we're good to go. And then you have to consistently be communicating back and forth with whatever the title company needs. Now, I do not recommend doing this on your own. I recommend, even if you work with us, we will have an in-house transaction coordinating team. Jack, Joe, and Ross are literally the best in the game. They've closed on more deals, more creative deals, better, fewer errors than anybody else in the game. I will put my life on that. You want to hire a transaction coordinating team. If you don't work with us, you could literally hire Jack, Joe, and Ross. They're Laythe, Laythe. As a company, they're the best in the game. Do not try and do this on your own. I guarantee you will have something catastrophically go wrong if you don't have somebody who lives and breathes doing this nonstop, supporting you. Once you get those big 3 items reviewed, you'll negotiate a credit with the seller. You will bind an insurance policy, meaning you will select one. You will sign tentatively indicating that you're ready to have this policy go live as soon as you close. And then on the settlement statement, the title company will typically list a seller debit, an amount that you pay for either a month, 3 months, or typically 6 to 12 months. You'll typically pay off the full year's policy right out of the gate at closing. And then the title company will produce a settlement statement. So you've seen that with the 2 columns, or typically 5 columns, the name of the expense in the middle, and then is it a buyer or a credit from the seller, or a buyer or a credit from the buyer? That pretty much lists off all the expenses associated with the transaction, who's covering what, and then what down payment amount are you making, what's the total cash to close, what is the seller getting, that's their net to seller proceeds. And then you sign and close. The title company, or in our case, a transaction coordinator like Jack, Joe, or Ross, will set up a remote mobile notary. So that's somebody who comes to your house, your place of work, a hospital if you happen to be ill, a hotel if you're traveling. I've literally also had a notary visit me at the Miami International Airport as I was closing on a home right before catching an international flight outside of the country. And then you will set up utilities and then looping in, typically you might manage the property. I would say most likely you're engaging with a co-host. It's similar to a property manager. A property manager is more of a term that's used for long-term rentals. That's specifically somebody who's handling literally 100% of everything. It's a long-term rental. There's almost nothing to do anyway, and that's purely passive. If you're going to be buying a home and closing on it as a short-term rental, you will need to have what's called material participation, which I'll cover in a few slides down. And specifically, you're going to have the co-host do the majority of the heavy lifting for you, but you will still need to be actively involved at least 100 hours in the first calendar year that you're running this short-term rental, and you have to participate more than any other one individual. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So to recap, we've talked about how do you define a market. The 10% rule, it's 3 items. It's going to be the gross income to purchase price. It's going to be the total entry into the deal, and then it's going to be the cash on cash. And then we have a handful of markets, okay? So the whole process end to end. Let's workshop this, okay? So let's say I've identified a market, okay? Now you guys can take hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars, literally tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of market research, and just steal this, okay? If I don't work with you, I guarantee I just gave you one of the best directional, I can't say investing advice, but ideas for you to explore, you to review, and explore and consider whether or not you're going to do something in this area. Let's say you buy a home that is very typical to the standard purchase price at most of our clients end up doing, okay? So this is a 750K. I'll just make this a little bit cleaner. 750K purchase price. And you're gonna do, let's say, 8% down. So something like an 8% down seller finance deal. And in a separate video, I'll explore the different closing mechanics, the deal types, how you can fund it, how you can finance it. But most of the deals we do, they're either secondary home loan products, which is about 10% down plus closing costs, which brings it closer to like 12.5 to 15% all into the deal. And then the seller finance deals, those have insanely low closing costs because there's no new bank involved, there's no loan, there's no broker, there's no loan origination fee or broker fee, there's no rate buy down where you're trying to buy a rate down from, let's say, 7.5%, like we saw over the last 12, 18 months. And paying, you know, a percentage of closing costs to get that rate brought down, and, you know, maybe a half point, a full interest point rather. So let's say you do a 8% down payment, and I'm going to make up the number. I can't math that out in my head, but that would be around like $66,000, let's just say, okay? So 66K down, and then we have closing costs. Now, in Pennsylvania, the closing costs in this state are a little bit higher than most other states for seller finance deals because there's one item which is super annoying. The property transfer tax out here is higher than most other markets, okay? So I'm gonna say the closing costs on something like this are probably gonna be closer to, for easy math, let's just say 14K closing costs with my kindergartner handwriting. So all in, we've got a 750K deal. PP is purchase price, okay? We've got 66 plus 14, that's 80K cash to close, okay? So now, let's go through the rule of three, or the 10% rule across three variables, okay? So the first thing is we're gonna do entry, okay? So this is obviously a super low entry, low money down deal, okay? This is 80K out of 750K purchase price, okay? So that total entry is gonna be right around, let's just say it's 11%, okay? So on that metric, it's pretty darn close. I wanna get it as close to 10 as possible. Obviously this is slightly above it. That's fine, okay? You're gonna see later on in this video, I talk about hitting singles and doubles, not trying to swing for the fences and get home runs or grand slams. So that one is good. Now let's talk about ratio number 2, which is the gross revenue as a percent of purchase price, okay? So we're looking at a deal. We got something in the Poconos. I asked a property management group, you know, what do you think this home will gross next year, okay? So we're seeing this $750,000 home. Well, the Poconos is pretty insane, okay? Let's say that they believe if they were to manage it or somebody else were to manage it, they're gonna connect the dots as the total gross revenue on this home annually, so this is annual gross revenue, is going to be close to 100,000. The purchase price is going to be 750,000. Okay, so that as a percentage, that's going to be around a 15%. I'm making up the math because I don't have my calculator in front of me. Let's say 15% ratio. Okay, now 15% is higher than 10%. So far, so good. Okay, now the final ratio. This is the one that is the cash on cash, okay? So cash on cash, which again, if you wanted one like North Star metric, if you just wanted one metric to rule them all, like one ring to rule them all in the Lord of the Rings, the cash on cash would be the most ideal single metric to take a look at. So my cash on cash, I need 2 items, okay? The first item I need is the total cash to close. I'm gonna put that in the denominator. So I'm gonna make this a little easier to read, okay? 80K is what I'm leaving into the deal. And then I need one other item. The item that I throw in the numerator is going to be the total net free cash flow. So again, what I'm looking for is net free cash flow. And I wish I could erase all these items here. But what I'm looking for is the net cash flow. So this one right here, okay? This is basically what my take away or take home cash is after all my expenses, okay? So let's say on this home, because I do have a rough idea of a home that's going to gross 100K per year, I have a pretty rough idea of what the actual expenses are. It's pretty insane out here in the Poconos. Like this is definitely an outlier market. It's probably going to be somewhere in the like 15,000, which is crazy, like $15,000 to maybe all the way up to like 25 $20,000 range. So for simple math, let's just say it's 20K net free cash flow, which, guys, that's insane. Like what was it, a $750,000 home, which it is, again, it is pretty typical out here. But again, the Poconos is like outlier of outliers, okay? That is a cash on cash return of 1 out of 4. So that is a 25% cash on cash return, okay? So to recap, we've got first metric, which again, this is the easiest one to disqualify. And what I'm trying to do is, if I'm looking at an investment vehicle, if I'm looking at an asset class, if I'm looking at buying a business, what I want to do is I just want to underwrite it and try and find the quickest route to saying, hey, this deal sucks. Or the 90% or 99% in this scenario, 99% of deals won't even pass this metric, okay? So the first one, annual gross revenue as a percentage, and I'm using the fractal, the numerator, denominator here, annual gross revenue as a percentage of purchase price. Again, it's all rules of 10, or the 10% rule, right? So for this one, which I believe I organized as the very first one, gross annual income to purchase price ratio, I want that over 10%. And on here, I believe I reversed ordered them. So I've got annual gross revenue. Yeah, so let's say I've got 15%, okay? 15%, this one passes the sniff test, right? So check, okay? The second one I'm gonna do is the total entry related to purchase price. So again, I want the lowest money into a deal to buy the maximum amount of real estate that I possibly can. The trade-off that I'm trying to get here is I'm trying to put the least amount of money into an asset to buy the highest value so that I can get the most bonus depreciation, get the biggest write-off, okay? So total entry as a percentage of the purchase price. So I think I had 80 out of 750, so it's slightly over 10%, but it's very, very close. And obviously the other two metrics are so far in my favor, so I'm 100% okay with that, right? So I checked the box there. And then the third one, it's the cash on cash. So I've got my net cash flow. So how much am I taking out, right? If I have $100,000 in revenue and I have all in $90,000 in expenses, including the Airbnb commission fee that they charge, the 3% that they take on every listing, plus my utilities, plus playing a property manager or a co-host, some deferred maintenance, some capital expenditures, like I have to replace a water heater. All in, I think I had net free cash flow around 20K, and then the total entry into the deal. So again, this is my cash on cash divided by total entry. This is 25%, which is, guys, that cash on cash is like insane, okay? So that is pretty much the end-to-end, like, how do I underwrite a deal? How do I know if it's going to be good, okay? So now to draw out what the whole process looks like from actually, finding the deal, going under contract. In this video, I'm not going to dive deep into finding a deal. You really do need to, literally look at hundreds, if not thousands of deals to do this on your own. I don't think it's realistic. A third of the clients who come to us, they've already done short-term rental real estate investing. Almost every single one of those guys have gotten completely screwed, and they know why in retrospect. They didn't underwrite the homes properly. So the first thing is you're going to be looking at the MLS, right? So you could be on Zillow, you could be on Trulia, you could be on Realtor.com, you could be on any of these, right? So you found the market. Let's say, we found Poconos. Now you're looking at homes. Most of the homes that our clients look at, they like to be at least 650K to all the way up to 1.5 million in purchase price, okay? So you start looking at these, and then you pull up your underwriting tools. So you pull up AirDNA, you pull up Price Labs, and then what you do is you find, if you were doing this on your own, I still don't recommend it. I think you should honestly work with us. We absolutely love what we do. And then we would absolutely love to, work with you, assuming that you are a good fit. And then you find a local co-host. This is synonymous with like a property manager. You want to get somebody, so find somebody in a Facebook group, find an agent, who can introduce you to a co-host or property management group, do a quick 30-minute call, 15-minute call, or ask them to record you a loom, tell you what they think the property is going to do. Don't rely on your own ability to do this. And then you basically get to the point where you've identified your market. You found your buy box, so you've started actually looking at deals, and then you've sent them over to some third party, AirDNA, Price Labs, those tools are pretty easy to use, and then a local property manager, and now you've done your underwriting. Okay, so you know roughly what the income is going to be as a percentage of the total purchase price. If you want to go deeper, which I recommend, work with our team. We build full stack pro formas. There are literally 55 inputs on this massive Google sheet with about 25 rows, 2 columns for income, for expenses, and then actually a third column beneath one of those other columns. We do pretty in-depth underwriting, but once you've done those things and you feel like you found a good deal, now it's time to negotiate. So what you basically need to do is you need to find somebody who's going to make an offer, or at least reach out to either the seller, or in this scenario where it's an on-market deal and they have a listing agent, you're going to reach out to the LA or the listing agent, and you're going to make a pitch. You're going to pitch on 2 things. Price. You're probably going to give them the purchase price that they want, or maybe slightly higher, assuming that you're looking specifically at seller finance deals, or you give them right at the purchase price they need, and you'd be closing with a secondary home loan product, and then you would be negotiating the terms. Now, I could talk for 4 hours about how to negotiate price and terms. I'm not going to do that here. Let's say that there is an agent involved in the deal, so you find somebody to represent you, or you find like a third-party consultant, like somebody like us, to communicate. We're not a realtor. We're not charging realtor fees. We're not charging commission. You basically get an agreement that specifies the price and terms. That agreement would be sent to you. You sign, and then the seller needs to counter sign. So we have what's called an executed agreement, and we are now under contract. Okay, so we're under contract. Okay, so all in, again, what did we do? We took one of our 5 to 10, 15 different cities that I highlighted, came up with our buy box, which again is a combination of purchase price and then your total entry, which again, most of the clients that we work with, they're doing deals that are anywhere from all in $50,000 to probably closer to $80,000, $120,000, $140,000 all in. That's total cash to close. And then you've done your underwriting, which I would say, again, use AirDNA, use Price Labs, but really reach out to a co-host. We are fortunate where we have a co-hosting company that we have partial ownership in. They're managing hundreds of homes every single year. It takes them 30 minutes to do the final layer of underwriting to know with pretty, strong confidence interval what a home is going to gross in the next 12 months. We've negotiated the price and terms. So that means you either reach out directly to the seller or to the listing agent. And then again, you're pitching them price and terms. I'll do another video on how to do that. I don't think most people will be able to do that, but you could be able to if you really want to. We get an agreement generated. That's typically coming from the buyer's agent who's representing you. You sign, submit the offer. The listing agent presents it to the seller. They have an opportunity to sign or to counter with a different offer. So you've generated the agreement, you've signed, and then the seller countersigns, and now you are under contract. Okay. So there's an email thread with the title company, listing agent. If there's just a seller, it would be the seller. If not, and there is a listing agent, it would be the seller's listing agent, you, and then the title company, and then it would also be you plus let's say your TC or transaction coordinating team, which again, don't try and do short-term rentals without a transaction coordination team. There's no egos here. Real estate is pretty humbling. You will get wrecked at some point. But you ideally work with a company like us who stepped on a lot of these landmines. When I first started in 2019 and then really got into short-term rentals, my first year was 2021. We've stepped on all the landmines we could possibly step on for deals that we've done for ourselves or guys that I've partnered with, so that you, our clients, or somebody who's watching this video doesn't have to. So you got the TC or transaction coordinating team. So title company, seller's listing agent, you, TC team. If you have your own buyer's agent, or it could be somebody like an outside consultant, like a company like us, like BnB Accelerator, who does this for hundreds of clients every single year. Okay, so title company is, title thread is open. You're now going through, and I'm not going to draw this anymore because I think you guys get the gist. You're now doing the big 3 items, okay? So you're ordering an inspection, insurance quotes, and you're communicating back and forth with the title company. About 3 to 10 days in, all those items will be complete. Now, if you're doing a conventional loan product, there is going to be a period where you need to work back and forth with the loan officer who's at the mortgage company or the lender who works at the bank to get the underwriting, get the QC quality control, QA quality assurance stuff that they need. But you're going to review the inspection report and come up with a credit amount and get that negotiated and signed by the seller. Get a policy bound, and then the title companies say we have clear to close, and they're going to start producing a settlement statement for you and the seller's team to review. You guys review and confirm that amount, and then you get a notary, and you get signed, and then you start working on, you've now closed, congratulations. You're now getting your utilities set up, and you're getting everything ready for either yourself to manage or a co-host company to take, most of the work off your plate, but you still stay very actively involved. Now, disclaimer, I'm not a CPA. I'm not licensed to give tax advice. I am not an attorney or legal counsel. I don't represent myself as such. No legal advice. All information is for educational purposes only. If you're watching this, do consult an attorney. Do consult your CPA. Most CPAs do suck. I will make this disclaimer as well. You really do need to work with somebody who understands tax code and is a CPA who has worked with or actively works with people who do short-term rental real estate. You should not take my advice. You should consult your CPA, probably get a second or third opinion, decide if you're going to continue working with your CPA or pivot over to a new one. But again, I do not provide any tax advising, and I stand by everything in this disclaimer because it is 100% accurate, okay? All this is for education and informational purposes only. You should always run it by a third party. So the basics. Bonus depreciation is going to be this incentive that allows you to accelerate the rate at which you deduct a portion of the property's cost, not over an exceptionally long period of time, but you're going to do it in an accelerated period, which in this scenario is going to be either 1 year or years 2 through 5 plus year 1. But really all we're going to focus on is the main item, which is year 1. 2 big points here, 27 versus 39 years. For most people who buy single family homes, which are ran as residential properties because they are ran as long-term rentals, they're going to qualify for that 27.5 year schedule. So it's $1 million home, what is that? Like 30 something ish $1,000 in depreciation every single year. So if I made $500,000, I would show on paper that I made 466 or 467 that year. Every year it would drop it, for 27.5 years. And then for anything that is a commercial property, what that is defined as, think of a shopping retail center, think of your office space if you buy an office and you house your team there or just yourself. Or in this scenario, short-term rentals do qualify for this 39-year schedule, which is important in a second, because of the use case of how you're running the property. So you're not using it as a long-term rental, you are using it as a short-term rental. So, and then on that 39-year schedule, you can accelerate a good chunk of that to year 1. So keep that in mind, okay? So instead of waiting, you can accelerate. If you're a high-income earner, which most of our clients are in the $400,000 to $750,000 range, followed by almost as many, but just slightly less in the $750,000 to $1 million. 2 spouses, they're each in the $400,000 to $600,000 range. Depreciation is obviously going to be very significant for you. You can offset your W-2. You can offset your K-1 distributions if you run your own business. So here's how it actually works. The bonus depreciation, it definitely applies to all real estate, but short-term rentals are not passive income, okay? So think of it as you're buying a business, right? If you bought a laundromat, if you bought a car wash, that's a business. It's an active income stream. You're not passively taking, distributions on that unless you, literally hire a CEO, which you probably wouldn't, and you're 0% involved. But a long-term rental is kind of viewed like passive income. The IRS literally qualifies passive versus non-passive activity. You need non-passive or active depreciation offset from a business that you buy, so like a short-term rental business that you run as a short-term rental, to depreciate against your non-passive income. So it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. If I have active income, which almost all your income is active or non-passive, you need to offset it with something else that is non-passive. So this is why you can't do this game with multifamily that you run as long-term rentals or single-family homes that you run as long-term rentals, which is why, when you kind of boil this down, everything just funnels into you can only do short-term rentals. This is why, I started in the long-term rental. I did the multifamily game. I did a BRRRR project. I started making a little money in 2019. Within 6 months, COVID hit, and I also realized we should just exit this. This is going to be terrible if I do continue. So all in, Another important item is going to be a cost seg study. Cost segregation is just basically a report that analyzes every appliance, all the furniture, and really what it does, if you want to think about it simply, is if you take a home and you were to physically flip that home theoretically upside down, anything that didn't fall to the floor is something that's going to be listed on these appliances, that, and then also the, you know, the walls, the flooring, the roof, other HVAC, you know, heating units, heating appliances, air splitters, air conditioners, condensers, you name it. They're all going to get added into this bonus depreciation schedule. Now, I'll do a cost seg video in a separate, or cost seg breakdown in a separate video. But basically, most of the homes that we and then our clients have closed on for the last few years, most everything in terms of bonus depreciation comes back in the very close to 24% to 34% of total purchase price range. Now, there are outliers. There are very rare scenarios where something comes back in the low 20s. I don't think I've seen anything come back less than 20% bonus depreciation. And then there, fortunately, are some outliers that come back on the very, very high end. There's some like close to $1 million condos in like oceanfront areas that if you're buying a condo, for example, there's no land associated with the purchase, or really almost no land value. So the depreciation on those is like 38 to, I've seen 51% of the total home value. But in this scenario, let's use the rough average of about 30%, plus or minus, 5 to 7% for most homes. So you buy $1 million home, cost segregation comes back at 30%. So that means you have a $300K write-off. Okay, and then again, in a little bit, I'm going to do a workshop example. $300K that you can reduce from your total taxable income. So I'm going to go through that scenario in a second. To qualify, again, this one is pretty mission critical. You do need to hit each of these 3 items, okay? So super mission critical. 1, you buy real estate in 2024, you close on it in 2024, you get it live in 2024, you do all the other 2 material participation items that year, you take the depreciation that year. The reason this exists, there used to be people who would intentionally not file their tax returns for a 2, 3, 4-year period and wait until they were in a better, higher income, or higher, their business was better off, and they would buy real estate in a future year. So let's say, it's 2015, for example. Somebody in 2011 or 2012 would not file their returns, and they would wait until they bought real estate in 2015. They would close on it that year, but instead of taking the depreciation in that calendar year, they would carry it back retroactive to another year, which is now illegal. So that is why rule number 1 is in place. You can't buy real estate in 2024 or in 2025 like this guide states, and apply it back to 21 or 22, okay? So pretty straightforward. The next one is 100 hours of material participation. I'm not going to dive super deep. There's an ATG, auditing tax guide, that the IRS produces that specifies what the material participation items that qualify for material participation. I will simply say this: if you close on a home in the first 6 months of the calendar year, which I would recommend trying to, especially if you're a W-2 income earner, it's pretty easy to substantiate that you are spending significantly more than 100 hours and more than anybody else. Number one thing I would suggest here, again, not tax advice, not financial advice, not legal advice, get on a plane, and to do my crappy plane drawing, and go and fly to the property and spend a few days there. Now, why do I recommend this? Well, if you also have a spouse and the two of you file your returns jointly, you both can stack your hours and both contribute to the 100 hours minimum. If you're there for 3, 4, 5, 6 days, not vacationing, but actually, working on the property, doing improvements, you might be shopping quite a bit. You might be going between Target, IKEA, or maybe some boutique furniture stores. Very easy way to hit the 100 hours and then, go well beyond 100 hours. And then this final one. This one is pretty straightforward. The average duration of stay, if you're running a short-term rental, it's going to be closer to like 2 nights on average, right? You'll have most people staying 1 or 2 nights, some in the 3 to 4 range. There will be some people who stay like 4 to 7, 10 nights occasionally. The average duration of stay is going to be like on average 2 days. The reason that this rule exists is to really prevent the bad actors. A lot of people will close on real estate and buy long-term rentals with the intent to run them as long-term rentals at the beginning of the year. So somebody might close on a home in February, March. They have a tenant for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and then they suddenly leave. And then they're like, you know what? I could get cute and report to the IRS that I was running this as a short-term rental. So I'll get it live in October, November for like 4 to 8 weeks. and then just say, oh yeah, first 9 months of the year, I wasn't collecting any income. I was just literally running this as a rehab, and I was improving the home, and then I got it live. So it's to prevent those bad actors. The IRS, if they probe you, they would uncover in a second, like, what's this $3,200 monthly payment that you got every single month? It's probably from a tenant, right? So again, super simple. But again, disclaimer, not a CPA, not tax advisor. So final item, the bonus depreciation timeline and that phase out rule from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from the stair-stepping rule. So a lot of people are very confused about this and don't know what's going to happen next year. For context, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there was reform that was legislated and then voted and passed in the House, Congress, and then the president did not veto it. That indicated that there was going to be a phase-out period to de-incentivize this bonus depreciation or accelerated depreciation or short-term rental loophole kind of language. It's not specific to the short-term rentals. It can be business stuff. It can be cars. It can be other things. Basically to phase out the incentive for, people were buying, $240,000 Lamborghini Uruses and taking 100% of the depreciation in year one. So it's a stair-stepping down rule, right? So in 2022, that was the final year, you could take 100% of that maximum amount, right? So let's go back and say you got a cost segregation study. Let's go back to this example here, and I'm going to workshop this right beneath here, okay? So in 2022, let's say you bought $1 million home. You had a $300,000 cost seg. So that means you can reduce your total taxable income by $300,000. So let's say you had $650K income minus the $300K. That leaves you at $350K, right? Okay. So that's a 2022 scenario. Let's do 2025. And for context, it is very likely that this all gets voted on and repealed and phased out in early 25 next year, and I'll explain that in a second, okay? But assuming this all stays in place, let's make sure I give myself enough space here. Say we do the exact same thing, right? So we say in 2025, let's have a $1 million purchase price home. We get a cost seg, and again, it's not indicating that there's a different cost segregation study amount. What the bonus depreciation phase out is, this is how it's going to be adjusted down, right? So now in 2025, we have this, let's call it a limiter, right? So we have a new variable here, which is going to adjust the final numbers. So we have a 40%, let's call it a limiter, right? So the bonus depreciation isn't disappearing. It's just getting reallocated backwards or 1 or 2 years later. So in this scenario, you're not taking as much bonus depreciation as you could in year one. 40%, what is that? I think that's going to be 120-ish. So it's it leaves you 120K. I think that's 40% of 300. Okay. So we have the same purchase price, but what's different here is the total amount of depreciation that I take for year one, right? So that's 350K. 650 minus 120, that is going to be 530. Okay. Right? Okay. So that's the difference between the two. Okay. But now what happens, so that's year one, right? But years 2 through 5, the remainder of this amount, so we got this value and this value here, the remainder amount, so that 300 minus that 120, leaves us with 180. This 180, I believe it is evenly distributed across year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. So what happens? The bonus depreciation didn't just go away. It's less year 1. And then I think that accelerated amount gets evenly distributed across year 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a CPA. I haven't been concerned about the depreciation schedule for myself quite yet. And I'm not concerned. I think in 2025, it's going back up to 100%, okay? But that is the crash course, okay? And like I explained, this is likely to get voted on and repealed, okay? So there is your workshop. So to recap, we've covered pretty much everything, right? This is like 60 to 90% of each individual topic. I didn't go super deep on some stuff. To keep the video short, some typical pitfalls, because at this time I've now onboarded hundreds and hundreds of clients. And I've done quite a few deals myself, and I've done deals where I've partnered with people. And I also speak with a lot of people who want to work with us. I still, hop on those calls. and I only want to work with people who are going to be great fits, and this is also going to be a great fit for them. The major typical pitfalls, and I will talk as objectively as I can on these. I think many people, this is like 1 out of every 3 people, they have one of these, like, I don't want to say limiting beliefs, but just like bad investing frameworks. They want to do their backyard because they can, show up at the property to, put out fires. So these first 2 are kind of similar, right? So they want to do something closer to them where in the event that something goes wrong, they're showing up. Dude, you're not doing that. A co-hosting company is going to have some people boots on the ground. They're going to have a local cleaning team they could call, a handyman they could call, somebody they could go on Angie's List or Fiverr or Thumbtack, and within an hour find somebody and it's like, hey, for $25, can you go and unlock this kid who's stuck in a closet where a doorknob no longer works? So that'll be one scenario there. But again, I do not recommend trying to do something local to you because your market probably sucks. Relative to other markets, unless you literally live in Broken Bow or Branson or the Poconos, Pennsylvania, or in some phenomenal market near one of the 6 or 7 main cities in Florida or one of the 2, maybe 3 cities in Texas, don't try and do that. And then the next biggest one. So this is my least favorite just because we find so many killer deals and, God bless our clients. There are, I'm just going to say it, guys whose wives kibosh phenomenal deals because, why would I go to Broken Bow? Or, baby, we're not traveling to the Poconos, or literally just nonsense stuff, right? It's profitability over proximity. And then again, the big thing is, and also which is important about this, you cannot, technically, if we really want to get into the weeds here, you really shouldn't be using your short-term rental as your vacation home where you want to spend extended time at in any calendar year, even after the first year. So I'm not going to get into the weeds there. But again, the ethos here, which I didn't write out, is live where you want to live, okay? Whatever city, whatever state you're in, live where you want to live, travel where you want to travel, and rent while you travel. You've been doing hotels and Airbnbs and resorts your entire life, and you've probably been enjoying the heck out of it. Keep doing that. And then invest where you want to invest. Columbus, Ohio, or a couple other places in Ohio. I personally don't ever want to go to Ohio. I would never go to Ohio on vacation, but I want to invest there. Vegas, I love flying to Vegas. Terrible short-term rental market. Even Henderson, which is just outside of Vegas and it's actually compliant. I love going to Miami. Terrible short-term rental market. Like, you can't run anything unless you literally live in the home for 6 months out of the year. So I'm not going to, put work into my primary residence and live there 6 months, leave 6 months and rent it. Like, that's not going to work. New York, it's banned for most of the area. Like, I can't do anything. Like, those are my 3 favorite places that I travel to every year. It's New York City, it's Miami, it's Vegas. Phoenix and Scottsdale, that's where I also go for a lot of masterminds and events. Completely oversaturated market. I wouldn't recommend anybody do anything in Phoenix or Scottsdale. So that's the bottleneck number 1. So again, just avoid that. Don't be married to an area. Just be open, okay? And again, over the last 4 or 5 years, my ethos and framework on making criteria decision-making stuff for myself and for clients has completely evolved. Every 3 to 6 months, we recalibrate. We find new markets. Like, it's always areas that I never would have thought of. Decision-making framework, this is my favorite one. You never need more time to make a decision. You need information. And when you have information, or when you have like almost all the information you could possibly reasonably get to make a decision, you're never honestly waiting for more information. You need a clear framework. And this is what I do pretty well to help clients make decisions on, which is why we have such crazy good stats on why clients do repeat deals with us, and then they come back and refer people to us pretty quickly, pretty early on in the process. I'm pretty good, just like I'm doing in this video, of giving frameworks. And then what you actually need to do is you do need to practice. So whether you work with us or whether you do this on your own, what I would really recommend is just go deep down the rabbit hole with our videos, find some other, I think we're going to be the #1 short-term rental education channel within the next 6 months of us starting to produce videos again. Do make sure that you actually go and exercise the decision-making muscle. So again, my big 3 10% rule items: go find 5 properties in the Poconos, go pull up AirDNA, go pull up Price Labs, get a cheap monthly subscription, pay the $2.50, $3.50 for each Price Labs estimate that you're going to produce. And you actually need to go and start practicing this muscle. So those are the big 3 things, right? I see people who can't make decisions, right? Which is very frustrating. Or I see guys, again, just being honest, 99% of the people we work with are guys. I see guys who get aligned on everything, and then their spouses come in and it's like, yo, this decision-making framework makes no sense, okay? We need to go off of information that is logical, and we need to go through a framework that makes sense, not a, there is no part of the framework that says, I don't like to vacation there. Who cares? The market loves it, and the people who go to that market love it. I would buy an Auntie May's bakery, for example, and I don't eat cookies. Like, I'm pretty into fitness. I don't eat the stuff that my, company or my short-term rental business or my, in this case, my fast food business does. But again, I'm not the customer. So you have to honor, this market, this customer loves it. Use that framework and have it make sense, okay? Seller financing. So the mechanics of a seller finance deal, what this means is, like I shared earlier, it's a seller who's owned the home. They bought it probably at least 6, probably closer to 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. Maybe it's doubled, tripled, or even in some areas, which is crazy, it's 4x in value, especially like Southeast Florida when we were looking out there for a while. They own the home almost entirely in cash, if not all in cash. They're going to have some pretty aggressive capital gains. So what are they looking to do when they sell the home? They don't want, if the home's now worth $1 million and they bought it for $300,000, they don't want $1 million right now because they're going to pay capital gains tax on the $700K increase plus all the debt pay down plus 2 or 3 other small tax items. So it's going to be around 15 to 20% capital gains tax plus 2 or 3 other taxes that each are going to be around 1.5 to, I think the upper one is 4.5%. I've never sold a home, so I'm not super familiar and paid the taxes on it. So I'd need to ask a seller. What they want to do is they want a little bit now, and then they want what's called like a monthly annuity or a monthly payment. That's what seller financing is. So the structure of that deal basically looks like you, the buyer, pay a monthly payment to the seller, and the seller is the bank. So you're paying them. Let's say you put $1 million home, for an example here. I can draw this one out in a second. $1 million home, you do, let's say $100,000 down. The down payment, that goes to the seller. They get the $100K. The $900,000 is financed over 30-year amortization, monthly payments, and then probably like a 5 to 7 year balloon. So in this scenario, you are getting tons of leverage with the super, super low down payment. You want that like every year. And again, we have clients who have done deals repeatedly and they just kind of forget this ethos. You want to get into deals with the lowest amount of input of capital contribution or cash to close as possible. Because the true ratio, and I'll add another ratio in here, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. In a separate video, I will talk about we get a lot of deals where the entry is so low and the bonus depreciation ends up being so significant that they're almost saving more money in terms of net effective tax savings. So a guy who makes like 1.5 million, who drops his income to 1.2 million with like $1 million home and they only put 130 in, their net savings is like 120 to 160K or something close to that in some scenarios. So you can overpay slightly because the seller is going to want to win on price, right? There's a long-term thinker, a seller who's selling the home on seller finance. They want to win in 5-7 years, right? But they're okay with letting you win with a lower entry now. It's not realistic for you to win on price and terms. And in a separate video, I can go deeper on diving into, what is fair market value? Why is it okay to overpay? Why do you want to make sure that you have super, super low entries? Because the name of the game here, and there's a perfect segue, you're not going to hit home runs and slam dunks on every deal or a grand slam. A grand slam deal would be a $1.5 million home that you buy for 1.2 that you put like 4% down on and that cash flows. Okay, that deal does not exist. If that deal did exist, it probably would be a completely run down property where you probably need to put $80,000 to $150,000 of work and labor and parts and material into it. Okay, so I have clients who end up recognizing, hey, I have a criteria or I see some item in my criteria for choosing what is going to be a yes property for me, and it doesn't have everything. Okay, it's one of those classic, you've probably seen this one. I think I can go a little deeper here. You've seen the classic, triangle example, right? In business, it's, you want 3 of these things. It's like choose 2, right? So everybody wants fast, cheap, and good, right? And you guys got those dads out here who told you this one. Yeah, everybody wants fast, cheap, and good. You want 3, choose 2, right? It's that scenario. You're not getting anything. If it's cheap and fast, it's not going to be good, right? If it's good and it's cheap, you're probably getting it pretty slow. Or you're probably working with somebody who gives you terrible stuff. They're going to have to do it over and over again. So until they get it right, so it's not going to be fast. If you want good and fast, it's going to be expensive as shit, right? In real estate, in this world, if you want cash flow, if you want a low entry, and you want, let's say some other one, you want like, equity, which is like price, right? Realistically, it's choose two. And in some scenarios, it's like choose one, right? That's what's more realistic, okay? So that's why I went a little deeper on this example, okay? But here's what's going to get you where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, because the biggest thing is playing the infinite money glitch game, which I'm technically about to start playing next year. I'm going to do probably close to a couple million worth of refinances and pay off just a little bit less than 2 million in debt. So I will probably, or a few million in debt. So I will probably walk away with, I'm projecting, but I'm hoping anywhere in the $550,000 to like $680,000 after I pay off all the debt on these 3 or 4 homes. I think it's going to be 4 homes, plus a small loan origination fee from the bank that I'm partnering with on this, and then like a rate buy down depending upon where rates come at next year. What you really need to think about is you're not going to get to where you want to be in the next 4 to 10 years thinking that you're going to hit home run grand slams as somebody who hasn't been investing for your entire life. A great analogy is thinking about this on the baseball spectrum, okay? You're a first-year baseball player, and even if you hire a world-class coach, even if you hire, who's Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, whoever, right? The great Bambino. I don't know anything about baseball. If you hire somebody to work directly with you, you're still striking out on pretty much every pitch, right? And it's going to be pretty similar in real estate. Like, even if you work with us, like, we'll be way better and more effective than you hiring the world-class baseball coach, because you're not hitting anything that's 105 miles an hour without years of practice. But in real estate, you can get pretty darn close, which is getting on base, which is a single or a double. And most people can run the bases if you're a basic athlete, right? So you should adopt this with your short-term rental investing approach, okay? Swinging for the fences. Like, I'm not going to say him by name, but I always have one of these guys every quarter. I have a guy who's buying a home in Austin, Texas. It's a slightly over fair market value. The deal crushes. The cash flow is phenomenal. The home is maybe 25 to 45 years old, so like there's expected deferred maintenance. Like, some stuff will need to be remodeled, but not immediately. It can be live as a short-term rental and already is, and will be perfectly fine the next 1, 2, 3 years, and then maybe he adds more value to the home later. He's trying to hit a grand slam. What this guy really wants is a home that was built last year, that's been live for 5 years, and has 5 years of income validated. Like, obviously an oxymoron or a conflicting set of criteria there, right? But wants like a brand new build, new development, no entry, like 4% down, cash on cash of like 30%. It's like, dude, this fairy tale deal, this unicorn deal doesn't exist. That's what swinging for the fences looks like, right? He's trying to over-negotiate with the seller. He's trying to just do these things that don't make sense. And that's the fastest way to, again, you're going to be sitting on the sidelines, buddy, like you and everybody else who thinks, oh, yeah, I got to have everything in here. Like, dude, I bought deals that went up 20% in the last 12 months while other people have been sitting on their hands. Like, you got to actually move, right? And then conversely, just not being engaged whatsoever, just looking at deals but not doing any underwriting. Again, this guy is good, and this profile of this guy, it's good because he is actively trying to do a deal. So he's not just sitting and looking but not taking any action. The problem is he's taking the big bat, and he's like, I got to swing for this with this seller and swing for this and try and get something brand new. So the ethos is, again, get on base every single year. Just hit singles and doubles every single year. Because, again, if you look at the big 3 criteria for the 10% rule across each metric, you will probably be in the top 1% of short-term rentals within the first 3 to 5 years of doing this. Top 1% of investors in the STR short-term rental space just by getting on base. Okay? So, final FAQs. Ramp-up period. Typically after you close, most co-host or property management companies will get you live in about 2 to 4 weeks. You need to get your utilities set up. They need to recreate or create a new listing. You're also typically, you might have a cleaning team come in there. You might have a general contractor in there. For like 3 days, doing small stuff, $5,000 to $15,000 worth of small work. Typically, you get live within the next 2 to 4 weeks, depending upon the co-host. I've already covered this on what is a fair market value and why would I overpay. In a separate video, I'll do just the 2 fundamental variables in real estate. It's price and terms. You can't win on both. You can win on price or terms. No seller should be winning on both, and no buyer should be winning on both, and neither should expect to. Like, this is not, for those of you who follow like a Grant Cardone or some other, guru or wizard in the real estate space, you're not like taking somebody's head off at the closing table. Like, that never really happens unless somebody's in a pretty unique position where you're not taking their head off. They know, they're in a bad scenario. So it's like you did what is fair, but fair leverage in that scenario. So you're always going to win on price or terms. You really shouldn't expect to do both. What I would do is twofold. You can work with a company like a United Wholesale Mortgage. You can reach out and ask for what's called an appraisal estimate, or you can have what is called a CMA, appraisal estimate. If you're concerned about what the actual fair market value of a home is, you can do an appraisal estimate with somebody like United Wholesale Mortgage, a UWM, or a CMA where an agent locally will produce that for you. It's a competitive market analysis. What you're going to do is you're going to get insight on what is the home, pretty close to in terms of value. And then if you are actually, buying it for significantly over fair market value, if you're good on those other three metrics, like if you're getting a lower entry and there's good cash on cash, and it's a pretty good, projected cash flow relative to the purchase price, even at an inflated value, still say like, dude, do a deal like that or two deals like that every single year. You're going to win in the short term. Longer term, it just takes you a little bit longer before you refinance the home and pull your equity out to deploy into another deal and start playing the infinite money glitch game. Who will manage the property? Typically a co-host or a property manager. I don't recommend somebody do it 100% on their own. I think you should have somebody who engages, supports a good amount, but you're still actively participating. You might go to the property, you might visit the property, do some things on premise there to support the improvement of the property or the improvement of the short-term rental performance. But some of the day-to-day stuff will be handled by a co-host. Oftentimes we get, a co-host to create a brand new listing with the reviews not translating. It's okay. In some, again, you're starting a brand new business. It's not like you get all the history there, but everybody does that. So it's not, a big issue. Most clients do not visit the property before you close. What you should be doing in lieu of that is working with a agent who can do like what's called a concierge service. You can pay them like $30 to $60 depending upon the area, and they'll go visit the home and FaceTime audio or FaceTime video with you for 30 to 90 minutes. You should also be working with the inspector while they're wrapping up and finishing the inspection. Just call them for 15, 30 minutes. They'll do the exact same thing, tour the home. I would not waste time going and visiting the property. I've never seen a scenario where in the last almost 4 years of doing short-term rentals exclusively, I've never seen a scenario where somebody said yes to a good deal more than they already would have, or said no to something that they shouldn't have done based on a visit to the home. I don't encourage it. I don't think it's actually worth it. I think you're going to have to get used to like, hey, this is a business where you have to rely on using other third parties. They are your eyes and ears. Like, you're not checking in on the cleaning team and showing up every time there's a clean. You're not checking in the guests. That's actually not illegal. You can't show up at the property while the guests are there. So just get used to it now. Like again, you can. It's up to you. I have not closed on a home and visited the property beforehand closing since 21. So it's been 3 full years since I've actually done that, and I've been okay. And most of our clients have been okay too, because most of our clients don't visit. Property does not appraise. It typically gets adjusted down, the purchase price, or you walk away on the deal. We have a compliance team that literally calls the county, calls the HOA, calls the POA, which is a private owner association, and then looks at a copy of a CCNR's, conditions, covenants, and restrictions. You should do the exact same thing. If you're not a super meticulous, diligent person, just pay us our money at BnB Accelerator, work with us, and we will do this for you. We have not had a single issue with compliance except for two clients who we ended up solving it for after the fact, and we've closed on hundreds of deals. So pretty phenomenal success rate. Income, we literally just look at only existing short-term rentals, take the existing income, look at, is it going to be the same, 10 to 15% lower? Did they overperform that year? Or did they underperform relative to the rest of the market? And we're going to say it's about 10 to 15% higher than what it did last year. Furnishing and designing, 100% of the homes we buy now are all already live as short-term rentals and already running as Airbnbs, and so therefore they are fully furnished. I don't think you should redesign or refurnish the property until you're maybe in year 2 or 3 and have a little bit of a better idea of how you should do it, or just pay a local design company to go do that for you. Typically for increasing revenue, it's going to be 2 or 3 main items: adding a hot tub, adding some other unique amenity that a lot of other homes have in the area. or just literally working with a better co-hosting or property management team. A lot of really simple high ROI items are going to be the hot tub. Another one that's insanely high is a professional photographer. I can count on way too many hands and toes how many clients and prospective, people who are going to buy homes ended up buying a home using the exact same terrible photos that were on Zillow or another MLS or the Airbnb or VRBO listing, when for $150 to $300 you could have gotten a top-notch professional photographer out there to photograph the home and produce those retouched photos and just add them to your new listing. So those were a handful of items. Profit and loss statements from the seller, typically pretty accurate. And the way you validate that is you can literally pull the history of the income on either AirDNA, Price Labs, or both for over 95% of homes. I still don't think we've looked at many homes where we couldn't find the existing income online. And then when you see a profit and loss statement from the seller, if they're idiots and they try and lie, you can catch them. But most of the times you're seeing just, again, what was their extra income that they got from like repeat guests. A lot of people oftentimes grab name, phone, and email of their guests and invite them back next year. So typically the P&Ls are pretty accurate. And again, once you look with a local property manager, if you're going to use a third party, they can help clarify whether or not something is accurate or not. Balloon payment is just a agreed upon date. A balloon payment is paying off a loan amount prior to the 10, 20, or typically 30-year maturation and due date. A balloon payment is something that typically happens around year 5 or year 7. So you and a seller agree to this because typically, they want their money out by then. The balloon date, when that comes, you've probably already refinanced the home, which on a separate video, I will break down what a refinance looks like. A refinance is basically, let's say you buy a home for $1 million and in 5 years it's worth $1.2 million. And in that period of time, you paid off, let's say $90,000 in principal debt. You have a home that's worth $1.2 million, and then you have $810,000-ish left in debt on that home. You're going to get a refinance. You're going to get a loan for probably 80, 85, 75%, or whatever the home is worth right now. Pay off the, $810 in existing debt, and whatever you're left over after you pay off that debt, after you pay off, your local bank or a bank that you've been working with of a pretty low origination fee. After you pay off all those expenses, you're left over, with cash. So that's what you'll typically do when a balloon date comes. And in the scenario where, you're going to let the seller know, like, hey, I know, 6 months, 12 months from now, the home is, up for a balloon payment, or I'm due for a loan balloon payment, I'm not going to be able to make it. Sellers understand. In almost every scenario, they know that they're just going to have to extend whether they like it or not. Couple scenarios when I back out of deals, almost every scenario where this has happened, it's just due to an inspection report. It's just due to, the home doesn't look like it's in phenomenal shape, or there's more than like $20,000 to $35,000 worth of deferred maintenance. Like you literally need to buy appliances now. You literally need to resurface a pool and it can't wait. Other really expensive items, sewer issues. If a sewer scope comes back and there's like a massive tree branch that's just like massive, that's penetrating a sewage pipe, which could lead to you needing to do a full-on sewage replacement. That's pretty aggressive. Rarely do we see that. The other scenario is just if you really, really hate the seller and they're just, being mischievous or just deceitful, which again, very, very uncommon. Our throughput success rate on closing deals is we cancel fewer than 1% to 3% of all deals. And almost every one, if we are canceling it, it's because the inspection report came back and like it's in terrible shape, which it shouldn't even be listed, on market in that scenario. So those are the FAQs. And then how do you work with us? Well, somewhere around this video, there's going to be a link. I would say, click the link to schedule a call. And what it looks like from there is, we hop on the call. We talk about your current income and then your cash on hand. I only work with clients whose household income is over $400K per year, whether that's just you or you and a spouse. And then you have at least $100,000 cash on hand, meaning, if I came through and said I have a deal, this is the most amazing deal, you need to come up with 100,000, you could do it. Okay. We'll review that. We'll cover a lot of what we covered on this call. We'll send you an agreement. Everything we do is custom for every client. So send an agreement, send a payment link, and then you sign the agreement, you make the payment. We do an onboarding call. That's going to be with typically me or one of my partners. It's a 60-minute onboarding call. On there, we're going to get more clarity on your buy box, your background. Do you already own any short-term rental real estate? And then we're going to start doing deal review. And we're going to give you a couple homework items, which will take under 30 minutes. You do want to form an LLC so that you can take that LLC, open up a bank account. So a new business requires a new LLC. You should always do one LLC for every real estate property that you own. And then so that you can have that LLC for going under contract. So when you go under contract on a home, I'm not Nicholas Korom who's going under contract. It's Brown Desk LLC Properties, Brown Desk Properties LLC, right? So that's basically what week 0 looks like. And then weeks 1, 2, 3, and then typically 4, we do a 1 time per week deal review call. Every day and every week, you'll be seeing the new deals that come in. Again, most weeks, it's anywhere from 4 on the low end, which is a pretty low end number. I think next year it'll probably be like 6 will be the low end. It'll be at least 1 per day. We'll say 4 to 15 deals per week. You will see all those. So we'll send them to you in your Slack channel, or we'll text you, or we'll email them to you. We have a few different new systems that we're going live with. And then you'll also meet with either myself, Brian, or somebody else from our deal sourcing, so acquisition negotiation team with the sellers. The first week, you're pretty much just getting comfortable with all this. You're doing the 3 homework items: the LLC, the bank account, one other small one. Week 2, you're actually sitting down and building that decision-making muscle. So when I highlighted this here a little bit earlier, I highlighted you actually need to practice this, right? Because to be able to say yes to any investment, you don't just YOLO into crypto or Bitcoin. Maybe you did, but you need, some information gathering. You need to probably watch this YouTube channel for 1.5 to 5 hours, depending upon where you're at in your journey. And then understand our framework. I give a unique framework to everybody who onboards with us, and same thing with Bryce and my other partners. One of us will do the onboarding call. And then you actually need to practice. Like, you need to build the muscle by actually flexing it enough time. So that's typically what we have in week 2. It's like, hey, let's do a deeper, like, hey, if you really needed to close on something this week, how do we get the framework and the decision-making muscle so that you actually do it? And then in weeks 3 through 4, by that time, most clients are typically recognizing, oh yeah, I think I know the area or areas, the criteria that I'm looking for, and what I'm going to say no to, what I'm going to say yes to. And they decide to go under contract. So they say yes to a deal, and then they go under contract, within the next day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever, until the seller countersigns. Some clients, they will take longer. They might do it in weeks 5 through 6. Really, nobody takes more than like 45 days. I think I've had only a handful of clients in the last 6 months who didn't say yes and try and go under contract with something within the first 1 or 2 months of working with us. And then again, it's like what I spelled out above earlier, right? So once you're under contract, my team is going to do the big 3, the inspection, the insurance quotes, and then the handling all the communication and liaisoning with the title company. Once those items are done, we're going to do clear to close. So title company will let us know once they're ready to close. We'll review the settlement statement, make sure the title company is not overcharging you, any seller credits that need to come back to you. And then once that's confirmed, we will do a signing date. So we'll order a notary to come to you. You will sit with them, and then you will sign. And then later that day, you will fund. So that means you will wire the down payment plus the closing costs for cash to close. So that way the title company can get the deed recorded and the property can be transferred over to you tomorrow. And then there will be some combination of a handoff for however you decide to manage the property. Now we have, I think the majority of clients end up using this one co-hosting company that we do a lot of hands-on, like we coach them, we support them, we make sure that they're always putting our clients in really, really good hands. Hand off to the co-host so that you get a lot of support while they are managing, most of the day-to-day stuff with the property. Again, do make sure you participate in the business. 100+ hours comfortably. Visit the property a few times, improve it materially, do some shopping, do some thinking, but be able to validate. In a separate video, we can talk more in depth about that. And then be ready to refer some of your coworkers, your business partner, family, friends who are also high income earners, and then do deals 2, 3, 4, all the way up to the client that had done the most is technically 29. How about that? But again, I think the average the average is for anybody who does their second deal. So anybody who's done more than one, the average is 3.7 deals, which is pretty crazy, right? We do have a lot of clients who do 2 deals per year. So I hope you found this super valuable. Our team internally, the mission is we absolutely love doing this. And the reason that we're going this route of doing a lot of education, you're going to see Brian, you're going to see Connor and myself put out a ton of videos, and hopefully you subscribe to this channel and watch more. We just want to raise the bar for what is excellent in the short-term rental space. It's very easy to validate income on homes. The problem is it is a massive numbers game, and there are a lot of points of failure along the way where unless you do this all day, every day, and have been doing it for years and have a feedback loop where you get properties live and you know what they've grossed and you know what the income was, and then you do it over and over and over and over and over again, you kind of don't get that feedback loop until you've been doing this for like years. And we have. So my ask is, again, just subscribe, like the channel, BnB Accelerator. Click the link somewhere around this video to grab a call with us, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.